Dear Black people, what's up with us when it comes to our health? Obesity, cancer, heart disease, stroke. There's a disproportionate number of African Americans who are suffering from these illnesses. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the theories of why I think our community suffers the most when it comes to health-related issues. Hey, what's cracking? This is Darren McDuffie, alias the PhatMan, and this video is being brought to you by I'mThePhatMan.com. Videos entitled Dear Black People, just talking about African Americans from a health perspective and what I've encountered on my journey. I've been doing this for 10 years, ever since my mom passed away from cancer. And this video is not to poke at anyone, but just to realize that we need to start educating ourselves, and we also need to be aware of what's going on. And from someone who's been, again, doing this for 10 years, I don't always think that as a people, African Americans as a people are always conscious about what's going on when it comes to our food supply, our water supply, and other things. We tend to live our lives in survival mode instead of living beyond survival. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that today. If you're someone who landed on this video and you're not African American, you may be Hispanic, and Hispanics are not as far back behind African Americans as you might think when it comes to health. Even if you're Caucasian or whatever race that you are, I would invite you to please pay attention to the video, because these things affect everyone. Just about everyone is sick. And even though I'm talking specifically to the African American population, these things also might pertain to you. So I just want to share a little bit of my background with you, and I'm sure that you probably can relate to this. So growing up, I grew up in South Carolina, and I always kid people and tell them that I pretty much ate everything on the pig, from the rooter to the tutor, growing up. And my diet was basically influenced by my mom. I grew up with a single mother. I'm not going to give a poor story, but we weren't rich people at all, but we always had food on the table. And my mom was a nutritionist for the Head Start program. So one of the things that she would always stress with my sister and I was always eat vegetables. So that kind of stayed with me, and that was one good health habit that I picked up from my mom. But outside of everything else, our diet was pretty much heavy in starches. Coming from South Carolina, a typical Sunday meal, if you've ever watched this soul food movie, it's called a movie out there called Soul Food. I know you've probably seen that. But our typical Sunday meal for after church or family get together would be heavy in starches. We'd have things like barbecue chicken, rice. Rice was always a staple in our house, just simply because we're from South Carolina. Some people call people who eat rice, black people who eat rice, geechies. But rice, mac and cheese, we would have very little, vegetables, but we would always have those starches within our diet. And again, our diet again would be heavy in the meat category. Again, barbecue chicken, pot roast, things like that. And it didn't dawn on me until years later, as I became an adult, how much what we eat is influenced by our mothers and our fathers and our family. And I remember as I started to get up a little bit in age, I started to change my diet. I started to not eat pork anymore. As one of those people who love pork, I love ham, but I just decided that I wasn't going to eat that anymore. And then I gave up beef, just simply because I used to have a lot of stomach problems when I ate factory farm beef, which means that the beef is fed a grain-fed diet more so than a grass-fed diet. So I know that these things shaped me, and it wasn't a lot of time before all the things that I was eating, all of the habits that I had as a small child, and the habits from my mom and what I knew with eating kind of caught up with me. I began to eat a lot of fast food in addition to all the things that I was eating before. And I remember when I would go home from Florida to South Carolina, how kind of bad I felt. I felt bloated every time I would come back home, just simply because I was eating a lot of things that were made with gluten. As you know, mac and cheese is always made with gluten. A lot of the things that I liked were made with gluten, and they included flour, a lot of white flour. And it wasn't until years again that I discovered that I had a gluten sensitivity. So those things were kind of weighing on me. And then I began to pick up weight. I could not control my weight, and I was a skinny kid growing up playing basketball and really wanted to gain weight at one time. And then as I got older, the weight just seemed to pile on and pile on and pile on until I was about 35 pounds overweight. And then everything changed for me. My mom ended up passing away from breast cancer, and I knew that that was my wake-up call to kind of start changing some of the things that I had been doing. So I want to share just a few statistical things with you in order to kind of shed some light on some different things, and also just to discuss these things and give you my opinion or my viewpoint, so to speak, on why we have so many health disparities against other ethnic groups within the African American community. So there are three main causes of death in the African American community, and those are heart disease, cancer, and stroke. As many of you know, I just shared with you that I lost my mom from breast cancer, but I wanted to read off some statistics to you in regards to the amount of disparities that African Americans face when it comes to our health. I pulled a couple of statistics off the CDC website, and I just wanted to share them with you, and I'm going to read these. I'm not going to be so PC. But when it comes to obesity, African American men, black men over the age of 20 are actually 37% obese. So that's about 38%, 37.9%, 38%. And then get this, when it comes to black women are actually 58% obese. So that's a little, way over half of black women out there who are suffering from obesity. In relation to stroke, stroke can be directly related to hypertension, or what we term in the community as high blood pressure. When it comes to high blood pressure, you have, again, African American men over 20 years of age are 40% more likely to have hypertension. There are 40% of African Americans out there, black men, who have hypertension. Then it actually jumps again for our black women, where they have 45% of them are actually hypertensive. Now, when it comes to things like diabetes, I wanted to read some disparities to you as well. So with diabetes, black people are 60% more likely to be diabetic. Black men are 2 times more likely to die from prostate cancer. And then we get into heart disease, which is one of the major causes of death for African Americans, and we're 37% more likely to die from heart disease. And then let's talk about children, because I want to talk a little bit about children and something that alerted me a long time ago to some things that were going on. And that is with our children, with black children, they're 73% more likely to be obese. With depression, our black children are 30% more likely to be depressed. And a lot of times in our community, we don't think depression is real. We have this thing where we're supposed to be strong, and anything that we encounter, we can overcome the obstacles, and that's fine. But there are a lot of our children out there, as well as adults, who are suffering from depression. And then with asthma, black children are 2 times more likely to have asthma, and then they're 3 times more likely to die from asthma. So those are statistics, and here is my hypothesis, or my theory, of why I think a lot of the things are going on, why we have so much health disparity in our community. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about is just education when it comes to health. There was one thing that kind of made me a little bit disheartened, and this happened about 2-3 years ago. I remember attending a gluten-free expo, and I remember just going to the expo, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, well, how many people here are of color? How many African Americans are here? And I believe that I could count on one hand how many African Americans attended a gluten-free expo. Now, I'm not one of those people who just go around and always notice that I'm the only person here or the only person there, but frequently I have attended a lot of health conventions a lot of health talks and just different things that deal with health. And more so times than not, I can count on one hand that you have a number of people there who are African American who are actually taking an interest in their health and actually being proactive when it comes to their health. And a lot of times I don't think that we're educated. When you look at the fitness community, there are not a lot of African American faces in the fitness community who are doing things actively, who are making themselves to be seen, to let you know that, hey, fitness is important. We do have people that look like us who care about their health. And also, when it comes to education, we're not always the people who are up on the latest trends. When I do my radio show, I'm often talking to people of other ethnicities. It's very infrequent that I'm talking to someone who is of African American descent, who's written a book, who's done something within the community to let you know that their health is important to them, and to let you see that there's a correlation there, that black people can be or can want to have good health. So that's a disparity I know when it comes to the education part. Most people out there are not reading books. When it comes to some of the statistics out there, and I don't know if this is black and white, but they say the average person, once they get out of school, they graduate high school or even graduate in college, they never read a book again. So I would believe that for Caucasians, but when it comes to African Americans, chances are they're not reading at all unless it's on a computer. And another thing is just being able to educate ourselves on the computer. There's a host of information out there on the internet, and I know that there's probably a computer in every home now. Everybody has a computer. It's easily accessible. But how many of our people out there know anything about the paleo diet? How many people know anything about a plant-based diet? And how many of them are actually even taking an active role in researching these types of diets, researching different kind of conditions, researching things that might affect them, instead of just going to the doctor and having the doctor give them some pills, and they take these pills and they don't know any of the side effects to those pills. So, and being just educated on their own, besides just saying, hey, you know what, this is my health, here doctor, you take care of it and you give me what you think is best for me. And a lot of us are not educating ourselves and being proactive when it comes to what affects us, because your health is wealth. So next thing is just change. A lot of times, and I explained to you when I talked to you a little bit about my background, is we hold on to habits, and I learned a lot of my eating habits from my family, from my mom, and we tend to hold on to those habits with us. And anytime we want to change those habits, certain things come about. Some people think that we're trying to be better than them, or we're, not remembering where we came from. And it's not about that at all. Most of the times it's just about wanting to live a better lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with wanting to live a longer life. And I've heard this from people as soon as I got into this health sphere, where they say, well, you're going to die of something. And that's true. But if you can prolong your death, that might mean seeing your daughter get married. That might mean going on one more family vacation. That might mean seeing your son or daughter accomplish something that you may not have seen them accomplish, because you took a little bit better care of yourself, so you lived 2 or 3 more years. People have no idea how death affects a family. I know when I lost my mother, it was a real emotional time for me. And it was a real emotional time for my sister, as well as my other family members. And you don't know how death really affects people. So another thing is just religion. And I'm not going to talk about anybody's religion, but I remember as a child growing up in the church and going to church with my grandmother and sitting in church for 4 hours, where, the preacher preaches about different things. One of the things I'd love to see is the church community, start putting on some programs to teach people how to eat, to teach them how to eat to live. Because I think a lot of times we get intertwined into our religion, but there's other things that are out there that religion should be telling you. I know that there's a lot of good phrases in the Bible about taking care of your body. So why isn't our church or our religious establishment and these people who you are going to the church and you're giving your money to on a weekly basis, why don't they have programs for you to come to tell you, hey, this is the paleo diet. This is really a good diet for those people who are looking to lose weight, or hey, this is what a plant-based diet is about. And this is, you know, how to maybe if you have high blood pressure, hypertension, how to get your blood pressure level down. Why isn't the church going out and doing more things to the community instead of just preaching about what's inside the Bible? We're living right now. We really need something to teach us how to live better. So that's one of the things that I think that we don't do enough of. And I know black people are very spiritual, very religious. Some of you out there in the video are going to church every Sunday. You're in church probably Sunday or Wednesday or Tuesday doing different things like Bible study. So why not have something to educate us on how to take care of our bodies, how to eat to live? In certain places, black people, African American people are very disadvantaged when it comes to economics. A lot of times we're not able to afford organic foods. We're not able to afford the best meats for ourselves. But when it comes to the disparity of all of this stuff, when you look at what we're actually spending our disposable income on, if we tended to take that disposable income that we are using for, let's say, Beats headphones or the latest iPod or latest Apple Watch or whatever it is, and then realize that the importance of food. How can we spend more money on our food? You'll see that you can maybe pull some of that disposable income that you're using for things that might not be so trendy, and you can throw that in your food, because food is medicine. And I remember doing this with myself. I had a Quicken program on an old PC computer, and I wanted to start tracking what was I spending most of my money on. When I started, I said, well, I'm going to do this for 30 days or so just to figure out what I'm spending most of my money on. And I figured out that I was spending most of my money on entertainment. And that would be, you know, everybody's out there familiar with Blockbuster. I used to always watch a lot of movies, so I would always spend a lot of time renting DVDs or going to the movies or going out, you know, to clubs or anything like that. And then what I did once I found that out, I said, well, you know what, I'm going to start saving this money or putting this money into a different container, a different box, and using it very differently. And over the next course of that other 30 days, what I figured out, or what I started doing, was taking that money I was spending on entertainment and actually putting that money towards food and doing different things with food, shopping at Whole Foods, going to the farmer's market and spending more of my money in food. And that's how I began to feel a little bit better, start losing my weight, paying more attention to my diet. And if you find yourself always in survival mode, you're just making it, you're never going to be able to get yourself to a position where you're going to live comfortable. Some people may not ever be able to do it just simply because their mindset isn't in that. But if you can figure out a way to rearrange your finances and figure out, hey, what am I spending a disproportionate amount of my money on? And then take that and maybe rearrange it and shuffle it into something else. And there's always a good investment in food. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was something I kind of held purposely for the end. And I remember when I said something about children, and children are being more susceptible. African American children are 73%, I believe, was more susceptible to being overweight, 2 times more for having asthma, and 3 times as likely to die from asthma. And I believe there were some other stats in there as well. But I remember attending a health fair, and there was a gentleman there. This gentleman happened to be a doctor, and he was a foreign doctor, Caucasian looking gentleman. And he said something that struck me right in the gut. He said that African American children are more affected by food allergens or food allergies, and he said African American people as a whole are more affected with food allergies. So a lot of times we look at this stuff and we really don't pay attention. And I remember when I started being really conscious about my body and paying attention to how things that I ate affected me, that's when I started to pick up on those things. I mentioned earlier in the video that I'm sensitive to gluten, so I no longer eat any type of bread, any flour, anything like of that nature, and I believe that that's helped me. That was the one thing that actually helped me from getting on this yo-yo of weight, where I would gain a lot of weight and then I would lose some weight and gain some weight. And ever since I've taken bread out of my diet, I never had those problems. And it can be as simple as that one thing of taking one thing out of your diet. There's a lot of things I know out there that a lot of black people are still eating that don't agree with them. For instance, cheese. A lot of people still eat pizza. And believe it or not, African Americans, I believe it's African Americans and Jewish people who, after a certain age, they lack that enzyme that helps them digest dairy products. And I know for me that happened, I think around 20 or so. I used to always drink milk, and then at some point I just couldn't drink any milk. And I know that there are people out there who still continue to eat these types of things and don't know the far-ranging effects of them. And a lot of that may be being obese. You might be able to take something out of your diet and lose 20, 30 pounds. It's just something that you might be eating. And that's something that we are unaware of. There are a number of food allergens out there: soy, dairy. People are even sensitive to tomatoes. And then you have the gluten. A lot of people are coming up sensitive to gluten. And a lot of people are celiac and don't even know that they have these problems with gluten. And just long-term eating these types of foods that you may have an inflammatory response to can cause you to have a number of health conditions, not just related to your digestion, but it can also have you have a number of conditions such as like Alzheimer's, arthritis, different things that can come about because we're all genetically different. So what might affect one person, one food may affect someone in a totally different manner. So again, that kind of goes back to education and why we need to educate ourselves, why we need to start paying attention to what's going on when it comes to the curve and where things are going, because there are a number of things that are out there that can help us, but we tend to stick in this one box and never come out of that box. And I know that people out there are worrying about their job, they're worrying about survival. But hey, if you don't have your health, you don't have any of that. So it's very important to, again, educate yourself, figure out where your habits came from. And you probably know that by watching this video. A lot of our habits just come from our parents and the people that are around us. And then if you want to make that change gradually. Don't try to make a whole bunch of changes. You might want to say, well, hey, you know what? I want to eliminate milk from my diet. There's really not a need for me to be drinking milk at this time. Then I might try going gluten-free for 30 days. Go gluten-free for 30 days, put the gluten back in and see how you feel. And that's just kind of a poor man's way to figure out, what's going on with me and my health and what things might disagree with me when it comes to my health. I'm going to end the video now, but it really concerns me when it comes to African Americans and the health and black people and their health, just simply because I know that when you know better, you can do better. And a lot of things kind of pass over our consciousness because, again, we're not at the forefront of what's going on. And we're not, oftentimes we're just thinking about survival and getting to the point where we can, go to our jobs and enjoy a pretty good lifestyle. But you got to start thinking in terms of abundance and what you deserve and what you're worthy of. And everybody out there is worthy of good health. So this has been Darren McDuffie, alias the Fat Man. Video brought to you by I'mTheFhatMan.com. I'll see you soon. Thanks.